Welcome to Martial Wisdom. Here you can listen to conversations on all kinds of topics related to martial arts. I'm excited to have Rionne Fujiwara back on the show, and today we're going to talk about training martial Aikido. Two major things that I want to mention before we get started today. First, I want to express my heartfelt thanks to the listeners who have donated through the PayPal tip jar. Your contributions are greatly appreciated. It's the love of the martial arts which keeps us doing what we do, and at the same time, it's true for producing the content that I do on this channel. Thank you very much for your support. Second, it's been several years now since I launched the Spirit Aikido online program. Releasing new videos every few days over that time has resulted in a very large library of material. There are currently over 325 videos in the program. This is a great way for you to get training and practice ideas which I've gathered from my own Aikido training, gleaned from other instructors, and taken from other arts. In the most recent series of videos, I covered some of the material that I lace into classes talking about legal ramifications of self-defense, as well as some tactical things that you do that are not just physical techniques. If you've been curious to see breakdowns of how I approach my Aikido on the mat, the videos in the Spirit Aikido online program are the best way to go. You get a great deal of content and help support the show at the same time. I encourage you to check it out. There's a link in the description. I hope you enjoy this episode. Now, on with the discussion. Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome back to Modern Aikidoist podcast and Martial Wisdom. Today, it's wonderful to have Rionne McAvoy back with us. Rionne Fujiwara, if I've got that right. I know people have been excited to hear from you again. I know you were off very busy doing a work project up until recently here, and now you've had a bit of a break, so to been able to come on the show. For those of you who don't know, he and I have been trying to kind of get this podcast going for some time now, and it got a little bit delayed because of busy schedules and whatnot, holidays and projects and all that stuff. But now we're starting out 2023, and it really fits the topic of this discussion, which is taking a fresh look at our training and how to make our Aikido training focused on the martial, focused on practical self-defense, practical skills. It's easy to fall into that training habit where you just kind of keep doing the same old thing over and over and over again. And when you go into a new year, a great time to take a fresh look at your training, anything you want to adjust or add or modify. This is a great time to do it. So Rionne, thanks for coming back, and I'm really excited to have this discussion with you.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
I've been away for a while, but I'm back. And just a quick plug: the reason I was away is because I just finished a documentary on the struggles of single mothers in Japan, which is a completely different topic to what we're about to talk about, but it's an important one nonetheless.
Interested in talking about that on a separate offline thing, because I'm fascinated with that subject. And I hope the project went well for you. So it sounds like you wrapped up the production here recently. But so I wanted to get on this because you've been very much in the space about practical martial art and actually having Aikido be martial again. And we as we were setting up this episode, we kind of talked of a number of different angles of how to open the discussion. But I think a good way to do it would be to cover not only your experience with training at Hambu and where the other places that you've trained, but also how somebody in their own dojo, whether they're a regular student, maybe a senior student or assistant instructor or an instructor or a dojo cho who says, all right, maybe it's time that our dojo needs to absorb a bit more, change a little bit, start to add things to our curriculum or modify it a little bit to suit us better, how they can look forward into like maybe what to change or ideas for tangible things that they can do. I don't know where we want to start with it, but I'll let you take the lead on a starting topic for that.
I think the word that you just used, modify, is a really good word, because we don't need to change Aikido as a system. We need to modify our training, and these slight little modifications, they're not difficult. They're quite simple. We can get into that a little bit later about how we can modify it, but we only need to modify things a little bit. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, Aikido is a beautiful martial art that's lost its way a little bit, and with some slight modifications, really slight ones, I don't see why we can't take it back to where it belongs. As I said, it's lost its way. It's like a sheep in the grass who doesn't know how to get home.
But I've seen so many videos in the last year and a half where people have gone through and they've showed within things like martial competitions, you see Aikido techniques in there. Not just the form, but the function. Although it doesn't look as elegant and beautiful as it does in a demo form, it's there. And I totally agree with you that the heart of it, the beating heart of it, is still there. It's how we approach it that makes the difference between the aesthetically beautiful and the functional.
I think one of the most common techniques I use when I spar in catch wrestling is kotegaeshi. But we as Aikido guys, we claim kotegaeshi, but other martial arts claim it as theirs too.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think using Aikido techniques, these are just the techniques that Aikido has brought into their little system. But at the end of the day, it's all jujutsu. It's all the same stuff. It's everywhere. Wherever you look, it's there. It's just whether you're willing to look. And that's probably the first thing we could talk about as taking what's the word I just used? Changing your Aikido training a little bit is to start to learn how to look.
And I would add in there too, because this is the time of year for resolutions. Just have the resolution of stopping arguing ownership over techniques, period. Like, I just don't think there's really, yes, you can give credit to, say, for example, like hip throws. I'll give judo credit for having some of the best hip throws of any art, period. They definitely deserve the kudos for it, but it's not like there's any ownership over any technique. It's like a waste of mental energy to bicker over who owns a technique or what style or what art has possession. There isn't.
Well, you've heard of a guy called John Danaher, right? He's that famous BJJ guy. Now he just put out a series of instructionals where he's actually doing catch wrestling techniques.
Okay.
Right now he's a BJJ guy and he's known for being on the ground and all that, but he's actually doing wrestling stuff. And I saw online some of the wrestling guys are like, well, how dare he do catch wrestling? And I was like, guys, this is as silly as some of the Aikido things I see online where how dare you do this and who can do that? And it's, he's taken some of these things and he's adapted it to BJJ, and good luck to him. And if he's making a dime, he's making a dime. But at the end of the day, those techniques have been around since the beginning of mankind. As grappling was the original sport, grappling and boxing, they were the first things the ancient Greeks did back in the days of, there was a place called Aegon. And that's where the original MMA fights were. And that's why we have the word agony, because you would come back from Aegon with pain and you're in agony. So these techniques are thousands of years old, and I wouldn't dare lay claim to any of them.
One of the things that I've found interesting is and I feel this way about not only mostly principles, but also techniques, is that the more you see a particular one echoed in different arts, the more universally useful it is and the more practical it is. And that's why I like my cross training so much. Not that I want to absorb everything that an art has, but I love their 10%, their top 10% bread and butter, like the stuff that is just, it works, it's reliable, high percentage. They've all got it. They've all got that 10% that's just fantastic.
Right. And the thing that we have to, that's a good point. And that reminds me about Aikido techniques. Now, I had a discussion with a young man yesterday, and he was talking about iriminage. And I said, why do we throw them? Right. And he said, oh, well, because it's in the syllabus. And I said, no. And I actually also had the very same discussion with a Hombu Dojo Uchideshi, a young boy, only 23 years old. And I told him, we do the nage, we do the iriminage because it's the nice Aikido at the end. But you have to learn the jutsu first. You have to learn the movements. You have to learn the technique. Now, the technique is irimi. Okay, now that we may be doing irimi to get in behind their back to take them down. We may be doing irimi to get in to choke them. We may be doing, now he was saying the young boy I was talking to yesterday was like, well, I teach, and he's teaching young children as well. And I'm teaching them to slap the mats. I said, okay, why do you teach them to slap the mats? He said, oh, well, to protect the face. Okay, so why are they protecting their face? Oh, well, I don't really know. Okay, well, you protect the face because they're on a downward trajectory, right? And if you go down with them as they come down, there might be an overhand strike, or it might be, in our case, it's a showman. I said, and you take them down there. So there's no need to throw them in iriminage unless they stand back up.
Mm-hmm.
If they stand up, you can get in there for an iriminage. If they don't stand up, you ride them to the ground. Right. And I think that little concept of why are we doing this is completely lost on Aikido at the moment, right? So this these techniques that we're doing in Aikido, they seem to be, you just said the 10% bread and butter. These seem to be the other end.
Mm-hmm.
We seem to have forgotten why are we doing these techniques, and we're concentrating on these lovely, beautiful throws where we need to go back. This is the first point I think we should talk about regarding how we can tweak our training a little bit is, why are we doing it? Why are we doing a kotegashi? Why are we doing an iriminage? Well, we need to break it down a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the beautiful little nage part, right? The throw is not important. It's not important at all. It's how we get there. Mm-hmm. And I think that the first thing in our mindset is to change is, the goal is not the end part. It's not the little cherry on top. Okay. It's how we get there. And if you want to do the nice little throw at the end, well, that's great. That's so that every old little lady that you might be training with, it's so she can take nice ukemi at the end. But
mm-hmm. You know, you struck on something that as you discussed it, I think is an important thing, and that is the why. And I'm reminded of the Japanese culture, at least that I've learned of, which is that you never have the audacity to ask why. You never challenge an authority and by asking, well, why do you do this? And I think that that's something where, while it shows respect not to challenge a senior necessarily by thinking, well, you don't know anything unless you can answer this question, but to not ask it means that you have students that don't understand why. If you have a bunch of people that don't understand why you're doing it, and you as the teacher, or you as the guru, whatever you'd want to call them, assumes that everybody does because they just copy or do as they're told, but they don't get why they're doing it, then you have the gap that we need to build a bridge over, and that gap is understanding.
Right.
And I think
I question if some teachers do know why.
Right. And that's what those students become teachers. And when they don't understand as a student, then they don't understand as a teacher. And now the ones who did understand it, maybe they're gone. And now you have a ship without a rudder, and you're just going on a direction because nobody knows why. It's just, that's the way it was always done.
And how do you improve as a teacher? explaining why.
Right.
That's how you improve as a teacher, being able to explain. And this is getting over it's the same as learning a language. In learning a language, you have three kind of waves. You get to the first top of the first wave, and you start to understand what these people are saying in this new language. You go down, and it's fun in the next step. You start learning new words in a language, and then you get to the third wave, the middle of the second wave, and it's really hard to get up that slope to start to become fluent as a speaker. And then you go back down the second wave, and you're learning more difficult words. And then when you get to the top of the third wave of language, you're fluent. And that's how I found in my experience learning Japanese. It's the same with martial arts. And if you don't ask why, you're forever going to be stuck as a shodan. Shodans probably should start to think about why, but they should also be still focusing on muscle memory. But I think from a Nidan onwards, maybe it's because the grades have been watered down. I can say Nidan. In the earlier days, maybe Shodan was the level that you start asking why. But in modern day Aikido, maybe from about second Dan or so, you should be asking, why am I doing this? Why are my feet going this way? Why am I doing this when he's doing this? If he does this, how do I do this? Why? And I tell all my juniors when I train with them, why are you doing this? And a lot of them just go,
Well, and I found that there's a direct link too with my own students and myself even, is when something goes wrong, you have to say, what just went wrong? What was I doing incorrect? And if you don't understand the why of what you were doing, you'll never get to the answer of what just happened. Why did I just fail? Whereas 100%. If you understand the why, then it clarifies the what. In fact, it shines a light on it like a beam. And so it helps you with that troubleshooting part.
Aikido is the only martial art I've ever come across where people are afraid to say why. In catch wrestling, my why is usually when I'm getting tapped out, and I'm like, damn, why did that happen? And why am I tapping? Or you take a kick to the head in kickboxing. It's like, damn, why did he kick me in the? How did he kick me in the head there? What did I do? And then you have to go back and go, well, you lowered your hands. I fainted. Aikido, because it's such it's so focused on. I'm not sure how you guys train in the States, but here in Japan, it's repetition with no correction. It's I do 4, you do 4. I do 4, you do 4. And there is no. It's basically trained in silence, and you can't ask questions. It's the worst way to train.
Disappointing, and I've not run into really any dojos that do that here in the States. Although some are more formal and they don't allow anybody to speak except for the instructor. But and when I've seen that happen, I've watched people do repetition after repetition that is bad. Like they're doing things that are incorrect, but they keep doing the reps, so therefore they're reinforcing the bad habits. And their partner can't say, hey, maybe you could try doing this, and because without understanding why, they don't understand what they're doing wrong. They usually feel that it's wrong. They acknowledge this isn't working right. I'm getting frustrated. And that is the big thing. Then the student gets frustrated. And sometimes they stumble around like a blind man trying to find the technique. And every once in a while they'll find it, but more often than not, they'll just amble around and they'll end class and they'll leave and they'll be like, I don't feel like I'm any better. And even worse, I think, without getting any input or mentorship or guidance, they feel like they're left alone, like go figure it out. And I think that is the old school Japanese style of teaching is you watch, you pick it up, you learn, that's your responsibility, but we're not going to help you. And I think that's an antiquated teaching style. It's hard on students, and it works great when you've got a tremendously talented student that can sort it out. Like he can spot what needs to happen. But for the other 999 out of 1,000, they never really get any good, or it takes them forever, and they'll oftentimes have big holes and mistakes because they just kept repeating, doing their reps and reinforcing bad habits. And any coach will tell you it takes a lot longer to reform a bad habit into a good habit than it does to take somebody from brand new and say, let's start you the right way right from the get-go. So
right. Well, you remember we did a podcast with DJ
right
some years back. Now I was very fortunate to have him as my interpreter, as you might label it. So as we were training, he would explain to me what Yokota Sensei was really saying. Well, he means this. Okay, and he would also explain to me in terms of and it also in karate it's this, because we both had done karate beforehand. So I was watching Yokota Sensei, but I was getting I had a little Babylon fish in my ear, right? And he was telling me, okay, well, it means this, and this is how you move your feet. And he was giving me the extra little feedback that, because it was a big class, Yokota Sensei couldn't give personally, because it's Hombu Dojo and he had to get around to different people. So I was quite lucky, and I try to do that myself. But I also find it's whether or not you want that babble fish in your ear. A lot of people just want to take it out and drop it on the floor and just do their 1 hour of training and go home.
Sure.
Five or so years ago, I had a junior, and I had never spoken to this person at the time, and I met them in the car park of Hombu Dojo, another foreigner, and this person said to me, I'm enjoying my time here, but I have so many questions. I don't know who to ask. If I have questions, I don't think anyone's going to tell me. What do I do? And I just thought, all right, kid, come with me. And I took him under my wing for a good couple of years, and I know that they appreciated it. So it's important to have that little Babylon fish translator interpreter in your ear.
Sure.
And it's a fine line between stepping on the sensei's toes while he teaches.
Mm-hmm.
He or she teaches. You have to be careful of, you don't want to be the teacher of the class.
Right.
But it's also good to give feedback as you train.
Yeah, I've found that the partners I like the most are the ones that can be forthright with me and explain what I'm doing wrong, offer me tips on, helping me get over that frustration point, or even perceiving it. Because a lot of people train, they're like, I'm just going to focus on what I want to do, and don't really have much thought of what their training partner is going through. So, and I've run the range. I've worked with all kinds of different people, and you can spot the one that's only in it for himself versus the one who wants to help you as well. So I think there's room enough for both of there, definitely on the mat.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
go ahead.
Maybe we can talk about the what I believe Aikido needs, the three different levels of training. How do we improve our training to get more honest feedback?
Yeah, I was just going to get to that of having you cover those three, because I think, we talked a little bit, you kind of sent me your outline, but I like what you put together because it makes so much sense, and it fits exactly the way that I would train, that I trained when I competed, and one way I trained fighters was, just like the three waves, you go step by step by step from the ground up. So why don't you go ahead and describe that through?
All right. Well, let me just share my notes with people, if that's okay.
Sure.
So you can see the the Word document?
Yep.
Okay. Right. So you got the three levels of training. And Aikido only does one of them. In the old days, I believe that they only ever did two of them. I don't ever believe that the third level was ever done in Aikido. And that's probably the difference between Judo and Aikido.
Right.
But we have this thing called, and if you look at karate, everyone knows the word kata. Kata in karate is this. It's a pattern. It's a form. We do the same in Aikido. It's called kata geko. And the G in Japanese, anytime you see a G at the beginning of the word, it's changed from a K to make it sound easier. So kata is a kata, and keiko means to practice, right? So it's a practiced kata, and like it's a form, right? And it's a promise. I'll attack like this, you'll do this technique, and this is fantastic for beginners, and it's fantastic to build muscle memory. That you would agree.
Yep, absolutely.
Right. And it's vital. Every martial art has this. It's super important.
Absolutely.
We really must learn the steps. And in catch wrestling, we do this too. And in catch wrestling, and also we do it in jiu-jitsu as well. You learn the techniques very slowly on the ground.
All have that.
Right, they all have it. But where Aikido loses its way is they don't have the next step. And the next step is not it's not being a dick. It's not trying to expose anybody, but it's giving feedback that we can both use. Right. And it's as I wrote here, it's kata geko with slight resistance. And so slight resistance might be, for example, you have someone grabbing your katadori. Now in the regular Aikido forms, we just kind of stand there and we grab it. There's nothing. So I would say to people, okay, pull them or push them. And then you might get some people say, well, Aikido is not a push-pull martial art. Okay, so what is it? Right. Because without this kind of movement, the techniques are not born. You can't do anything unless you have something to
blend with movement if there's no movement.
Exactly. And a lot of Aikido people misunderstand this idea of blending. And most likely they think that blending is like this lovely, beautiful circular movement where you blend with a nice attack, but it's not. Blending is, if he goes that way, just go with it. There's no need to force. If he's pulling me, I don't have to go the other way, because then it becomes who's stronger. And
it's pure adversarial tactics. And
you're about what? You're about 6'4", right?
Yes.
Right. I'm a tiny. I'm 5'10" with my Tom Cruise boots on. Right? If you pulled me as hard as you would, and I tried to go the other way, I have no qualms in the world. You will pull me to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll feel how I'm resisting. You'll feel the tension, and no one will do anything. Right. So I think what we need is this kind of resistance. Now, for example, you see people do Fujiwara, and they stand there and they don't even, a lot of people don't even put their thumbs in on the collar when you do the Fujiwara. They kind of just, at least here in Japan, they kind of just put their hand up here and they kind of wait there. You need to pull them to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You need people to feel what this technique is doing.
Mm-hmm.
My objective is to pull you to the ground, and that's not to rip them to the ground. That's just to give them something so they start using their brains a little bit. Okay, so if he goes that way, okay, maybe I can get out of it this way. If he goes that way, and this is the second step, I believe, that we put here. If you have a look, I've written here, learn how to play chess.
Mm-hmm.
When he does this, think about it and make your move. If he outmoves you, that's okay. Make your move. And it should be a constant feedback, right? And this is super important. And I feel that we've lost this completely in Aikido. What people do now is, if you have this slight resistance, most people I've come across, they just muscle up. Mm-hmm. They tense up, and they for whatever reason, if the technique is kotegash and they can't do it, they'll double down on kotegash. They'll try to rip your wrist off, and it usually just ends in failure. Look for other openings. Look for other ways. If you want to stick with the kotegash, look for other ways to change it up, or do something different. It doesn't have to be set in stone. And I think that this is super important, giving each other feedback.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things too about adding that resistance, and one of the things that, as I started adding onto my curriculum, because I wanted to fill one of the holes that I felt Aikido had, and one of them was, you get taken down, that you have to be able to get back up. And as I trained my students with it and they got better at it, you know, I'd have somebody usually bigger than them on top. I said, you got to get up off the ground, and of course taught them the techniques, how to do it. But you feel incredibly empowered when somebody tries to take you down and you have the ability to keep from getting taken down, or if you're on the ground and you can get back up regardless of how they try to hold you down. To me, that's the whole point of martial art, of you want to train yourself to have that strength and confidence that under stress you can do those things.
Confidence is so important. And the thing is that what I find in Aikido is, not many people that I come across have confidence. And when you have a conversation with someone, let's say someone's doing BJJ, which has this massive propaganda issue about BJJ being super tough guys, but that's another story for another day. But you come up against, well, you have a conversation, say in a bar over a beer, and I find that a lot of people say, oh, well, yeah, I do Aikido. And they're not confident to say, I do Aikido. I rarely find someone. I'm super confident. I was like, yeah, man, I do Aikido. And my Aikido is probably not what you see on Instagram, but I do it and I'm proud that I do it.
Right.
Confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's super important as well. I'm glad that you're teaching your students that. That's nice to hear.
To me, it's crucial because, you know, while I don't agree that every fight ends on the ground, you could end up on the ground, and it's just a fact. And if you're there, I'd rather have you get to your feet, because at least there you have your mobility. I mean, as Aikidoka, we do our work on our feet. And if, you know, you could be in a park laying on the grass and suddenly have somebody over you, and you need to get back to your feet. So,
well, you know, we do have techniques on the ground in Aikido, though. You know, we have Suwariwaza.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of to bridge the gap between, well, I believe anyway, when with judo, when you have newaza, the old school judo, I think Aikido tried to do something to match these judoka where they could still use their Aikido techniques.
Mm-hmm.
If you did end up on the ground, well, you could probably still get Nikyo if you somehow got to your knees, right? And and we do practice standing and sitting from Seiza, standing, doing Ikkyo, standing, sitting, as you do it. So, and that's important. You getting leg strength, using your legs, learning how to bend your knees.
Yeah.
So we do have these techniques. It's just we need to understand again why are we doing Suwariwaza?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the most famous scene in was the second Seagal movie when he was in the bar And he gets down on his knees. He gets down on his knees, and there's the guy with the shotgun. And he's like, come on, and it's like, that looked cool. But I mean, he's on his knees for a reason. You never know when you might find yourself on your knees.
Right.
That's cool.
So, all right. So yeah. And I found too that the options, and I just call them the variables of, because as I would work out with my training partners, I'd be like, okay, we've gone through the pattern. Now I want you to throw in some variables, like do something unexpected, because I like that part. Because, as a competitor, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. You can never predict what somebody's going to do, and they're always going to throw something a little different at you. So you figure out, all right, how do you mitigate those variables? How do you prepare yourself for them, and how do you roll with them as they come? And to me, that's really where Aikido and its flexibility and its movement shines. But if you never practice it, it never really shines for you.
It's the hidden power of Aikido. It's hidden. I think if you go back to the old days of the samurai, where they had these, say you had two guys battling it out with swords, and their swords are clashing, and then suddenly one guy goes, you know what, screw it, and he gives a big cut. Right? And then that big opening is the opening that the swordsman needed to cut his way to victory. I think, unfortunately, Aikido has only taken that last big movement.
Sure.
We have one shot in Aikido. If you only know Aikido, you have one shot, and that's that big haymaker. Right? I've been in my youth. I've been in a few scraps in bars before, and people do throw big haymakers.
Oh, they do.
But you have one shot in Aikido. You better make it last. You better make it work. Otherwise, if that big haymaker misses and this guy turns around and he's close, well, shit. Right? So,
yep.
How I train with my guys is, and we don't put any of this online, but what we do is we'll throw a yokomen, and I'll choose whether to enter or I'll choose whether to take a step back too much. If I've taken a step back on purpose too much, I've created my own distance. I ask them to attack anything you want straight away. So if it's a yokomen, suddenly he'll come in with a back fist. Okay. And I don't know what's coming on this second attack. And these are usually the chances where techniques are born of the purest kind. When you don't have a chance to think about what's coming. It's suddenly a back fist to your head, or it's suddenly an open palm strike, or it's suddenly something, and all you can do is react. And this is the chance where this is where your muscle memory comes in. Can I react faster than him? Because if you don't, then he reacts faster than you, well, it's good night, sweetheart,
And I think that any musician would identify this as improv. Of you're not just playing a song that's already been recorded and mapped out for you. You're playing in a key, you're playing, set of chords with other players, and you're just letting it flow, and it just comes. It's not something you plan out. It's total improvisation.
Right. 100%. And although it's important to distinguish that we're still not doing MMA. If you want to go do an MMA, join an MMA dojo, put on the headgear, put on the gloves. It's still important to train Aikido as it is, but with these steps that I've outlined here. Sure. And so the last step would be to go and play chess. You've seen Aikido randori videos online, right? And some of them are just cringeworthy. And True. It's just unfortunate that they label it randori, because it's not randori.
Correct.
And multiple attackers of randori
are just jiwaza.
Yeah, it's multiple attackers doing randori. It's super difficult. I think we need to take it back a step and say maybe, okay, let's try randori with just two people. Right?
Yeah, I've done that. Actually, I introduced that on my yellow belt test, is to get students used to live environment just with one attacker. Because you got to start somewhere, and that's a good place to start.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So you can see I've got here go and play chess. So you're probably wondering, well, what is chess? Well, chess is just, Yokota Sensei always talked to us. He always told us Aikido is free. It's what you make of it, but you must have plans. You must have things in your toolbox.
Right.
If plan A doesn't work, go to plan B. If plan B doesn't work, go to plan C. And you can only get to these plans by doing the first step, kategeko, over and over again, then moving on to the second step, right? And drilling and drilling and drilling with repetition. And then you can go on to go and play chess. And chess is just, okay, if he does a showman, it doesn't work, I can change it up. It's these 3 steps are
that third step is something that something about it struck me a long time ago, and this was a huge difference between what I noticed when I would compete and then when I picked up Aikido, and that was with the kategeko, you always knew what was coming. In live fire, you don't know what's coming. You've got to spot it. And that's a skill all on its own. And if you never do that, if you always know what's coming or roughly what's coming, you'll never get to that point of having that eye to spot, all right, is this person setting up a kick? Are they setting up a body lock? Are they going to do some kind of punch combination on me? And if they do, what is it? And how do I respond? Like that whole layer really is what true understanding fighting is about. And I'm not talking about being a monster in terms of how much damage you can do, but if you're going to survive violence, you have to be able to see clearly what's being mounted against you.
100%.
And
you're only lying to yourself if you stick to the first kategeko only and don't do anything else. Yep. And I've mentioned it to you before, and it's a great saying, but the tatami never lies.
Absolutely.
Right. You can lie to yourself, but the tatami will not lie. It will expose all holes that you have. I still find myself all the time getting, oh shit, I could have done that better. And that's because I train honestly and sincerely. And this is an important point as well.
Yep, absolutely. And one of the things that I remember, one of the biggest shifts was, because when I came up with in Aikido, we always did the yokomen that had the telegraph, the hand comes out, and what I noticed as I would teach fighters to compete, one of the big questions was, what do I watch? Where are my eyes? What should they be looking for? And what I noticed with Aikido is that when you get this big telegraph, this hand is usually where the eye gets drawn, and it should not be looking at the hand. And so I shifted into, all right, watch the shoulders. Watch that triangle between the chin and the shoulders, because once you see where the shoulders are pivoting, that will tell you what is about to come, whether you don't see that hand or not. And for example, the overhand right that's often used to ambush people, or the haymaker, the hand will disappear. You'll see the shoulder swivel back, and then suddenly that hand comes flying out. But if you're looking for hands, because that's what you train to do over and over and over again, and you don't see it, you won't see the important part, which is the shoulder. So It integrates with what your eyes are doing and what you're really watching for those tells.
Well, I played basketball for a very long time growing up, and it's very similar to martial arts. Absolutely. And we're always taught on defense. Don't watch the head. Don't watch their feet. Don't watch anything else. Watch the little triangle from the solar plexus to the top here, because you'll never get faked out on defense. It's the same for martial arts.
Absolutely.
It's probably a very good segue into how I've talked about the common principles of martial arts. And the reason that I wrote this is because I traveled all over the world, mostly for wrestling and work and whatnot. But I've done a lot of Aikido training, and very rarely have I ever come across Aikido teachers that can explain. I'm not trying to put anyone down, by the way. It's not their fault that they don't explain it. It's mostly just because it seems to be these principles are forgotten. And you can see here that, every martial arts has common principles. Right. I believe these are the most common. Whether or not you know them subconsciously or you make an effort to teach them, I think as long as your students are getting this information, that's all that's really important. And it's, especially for Westerners like ourselves, it's not super important to learn the Japanese, but it is important to relay the principles to the students. And so you were just talking about eye contact, right? How to not get faked out by these big, right? And that comes down to Metsuke. And Metsuke is, as I've written here, it's literally me means eyes, and skeru means to attach to something, right? So you're attaching the eyes. So there are two levels to looking. And I really believe that even in Aikido, we haven't even got past the basic first level, which is I've written it here, ken no me. And we've heard this in all kinds of mediums, not just martial arts, but eyes are the windows to the soul. Your intentions are they're written in your eyes. And it's important not to get stuck looking at somebody's eyes, because you'll get faked out straight away. So I always teach everybody to just kind of see the bigger picture here, and kind of to look through them.
I just want to jump in with something that I find we were talking about this a little bit before we cut in, but I've noticed it about how some practitioners, especially senior instructors, like the more experience they get, their eyes are floating around elsewhere. They're looking somewhere else in the room, like they're not even looking at an uke. And that always bugs me for two reasons. One is, if you're not looking at them, you don't know what they're doing. They could throw you a surprise and you would never even see it. The second is, and this is with just a natural physiological response to a threat, is you will look at it. Like if you are walking down the street and a dog starts angrily barking at you, you'll turn and you'll look right at it. Like that's an instinct you cannot just rewire, and you shouldn't. It's meant to keep you alive. So
I can't tell you how many times I've said to people when they're throwing, why are you looking over at the wall? Are you thinking about your dinner? Are you thinking about what you're going to cook? Are you thinking about what happened today at work? And I mean, thinking about if you've had a rough day at work, sometimes it does play on your mind.
Right.
But that means you're not switched on. Right. The dojo is the best place to put everything that's happened during the day behind you, have a good solid hour of focus, and stop looking at the walls. And it's a big pet hate of mine too.
Yeah. And I mean, I get that you shouldn't have tunnel vision. You don't want to have that, but you don't want to put your attacker in your own blind spot on purpose. Like, to me, that would be foolish.
Well, this is the next step in advancing our, as I've written here, advancing our level of Metsuke. And that's to learn how to do the technique whilst looking at your guy, but peripheral vision
keeping your peripheral open. That is a very high level skill.
It is high level, and it is super hard, but the only way to do it is to go back to our 3 steps here and learn how to incorporate all 3 steps into our training. It's the only way.
Yep, totally agree.
These are super important. So you can see here, we talked about that. If you look at his feet, you can't see his hands. If you look at his hands, you can't see his feet. So important, super important to see the big picture.
Right.
And a lot of people struggle with it, especially beginners. So I tell them to look through them, and that helps them to see the peripheral.
Sure.
Other common principles, like here, footwork. In karate, I grew up with karate. Footwork was so important. We were drilled on footwork. Footwork. You see a lot of people in videos that we'll show a little bit later with massive wide stances. And narrow stances. And it's like, well, there's an ashibara, a foot sweep, and it's super important to be lying your feet on the balls of your feet, ready to react, as we talked about, ready to react to whatever uke is going to do.
A couple of years ago, I actually picked up some agility ladders and had my students use those, because I found that it was easy for them to learn to pick up, especially their back foot. It's easy to drag the back foot, things like that.
Talking about a rope ladder.
I even had once we did it for, worked on them for a couple of months and then kind of put them away, and had a student come back and said, I really want to do that again, because boy, it really helped my footwork out a lot. And I mean, we're building, all martial arts build from the ground up. So if your footwork is bad, there's no amount of upper body work that's going to make up for that. It won't.
If you have 2 left feet, sometimes you're born with 2 left feet, and that's okay. Why is Aikido the only martial art that I've come across, at least, that doesn't do these extracurricular things, right? You can't just go to school for a few hours a day, or you can't just do 1 class at school for 1 hour a day and expect to ace the exam. Right? extracurricular things. Skipping rope helps. Yep. Doing these you're talking about rope ladders, I assume.
Yeah, agility ladder. Yeah, it's
right.
Like
they're brilliant.
Football players use them, and all kinds of different people use them.
Yeah, I have one as well. I use it all the time. They're brilliant. And the thing is, people have good intentions when they teach children, and so you see these kind of rope ladders come out in children's classes a lot. Right? Because because children need to have these real basics developed early on. Get good footwork, and hand-eye contact coordination and stuff. Why are we throwing that out when it comes to teaching adults? It's always miffed me. I've always, it's just always been a pet hate, another pet hate. Why are we skipping over our bread and butter?
That's it. So, well, cool. Yeah. And as we just to kind of back up a little bit or look at it from the top, these are all ideas for things to look at yourself and take stock of in the beginning of the new year, and to ideas for how you can look at improving your own art. And one of the hardest things to do is to spot your own deficiencies and to bring them on and say, you know what, I really suck at this, or this is something that is just not acceptable, that my low level of skill with this, or that I struggle with it. And especially as martial artists get more advanced and more experienced, the ego doesn't want to let you accept you've got holes, that you've got deficiencies, and it wants to say, well, I'm a black belt, I know what I'm doing, I'm highly skilled, and you do have some things you're probably very good at, but you're not done until you fill the holes and you acknowledge them. And this is a time to sort of take stock in those. Okay, what can I do that's going to really sharpen this up?
And if you do the monkey see, monkey do practice, where there's no feedback, then you're going to be stuck in this little rut forever. So you're 100% right. Yeah. We need to always be checking ourselves.
And in my opinion, in a good dojo culture, you'll have students checking each other and helping each other along, because that's a mutual support system. And it's sad if they're utterly silent and letting each other kind of suck without any input.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And I mean, I don't want to speak too illy of where I train, but even after class, when I try to do some things with my juniors, like, okay, why don't you try this? I still feel piercing eyes on me. Like, what's this guy doing? How dare he? I feel that all the time. So I almost basically gave up doing things after class. Unfortunately,
that's too bad.
We need to build an environment where we can foster good relationships and good martial technique.
A good dojo environment to me has students tripping over themselves to come back to the next class, and they're eager for the nourishment they get there, and they should never leave feeling like they were all alone, or they're just left to figure it out by themselves, or
exactly. Any question that you have, you just be eager to ask it, be eager to find the answer.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's continue on.
All right, well, I mean, we covered footwork. I'm gonna leave distance to the end, but Zanshin, we don't have to talk about it too much, but it's important to have the right attitude when you train, right? It's important to have this martial awareness, martial spirit, some intent in your technique. You can't just go around looking like a zombie doing the technique just for the sake of doing it. And there's not much I can really talk about it here. It's not really a talking thing. It's more of it's teacher's job. It's a sensei's job. My teacher, actually, when I was coming up in Australia, he was from Liverpool in England, and he would always say, "Come on, lads, keep the kettle boiling." And he wouldn't let us get into any kind of zombie pace.
Okay.
Where I find that a lot of people in Aikido now, they're in their comfort zones of doing it at their own comfortable level, and we really need to get out of this comfort zone. We really need to put ourselves in an area where that we're not comfortable, and it forces us to learn.
It does. We should always be just outside that comfort zone into the anxiety part, not so far over it that you're totally swamped and you don't even know what's happening. But I think that's the skill of a good instructor, a good coach, that can guide a student. Say, we're going to push just a little beyond your boundaries, enough so that you feel like you can almost handle it, but then each class, that boundary goes out a little farther and a little farther as the student grows.
This is where we come on to the learning the languages in the 3 waves, because then when you do that, if you're a good teacher and you can push them a little bit and they overcome it, they feel so good about themselves. I know that's how I felt. I felt so good. But then there are days when you go, man, I really suck at this. Oh, this was horrible. And then there are days where you're like, wow, I did that. That's awesome.
Well, and you can compare it to a very simple analogy of, somebody decides, you know what, I'm weak. I need to get in shape. I'm going to start doing some push-ups. The first day they do push-ups, they're lucky to get out 10 of them or 15. And they go, oh my God, I'm sore. Well, have them do that. And within a couple of months, they'll be doing 50, 100, 150 and just banging them out. I mean, you get stronger because you push yourself that way.
Yeah, the human body it's an incredible, and the human mind, it's an incredible tool.
It is.
We can do so, as you always say, it's like Doc Brown said in Back to the Future. If you put no, it wasn't Doc Brown, it was Marty's father. If you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
Yep. That's it.
So anyway, I've got Shisei, which is posture. It's important not to be sloppy. And who checks posture? Well, it's hard to check your own posture, so you need the feedback from the teacher. You think about why is a wrestler so humped over and so down? It's because probably he's practicing within a rule set,
right?
And mostly in wrestling, the rule set is takedown and pins. That's why he's humped over. In our catch wrestling, if I see someone humped over, I immediately close the distance, because I pretty much know what they're gonna do. If someone's bent over like this as a wrestler, I know pretty much they're shooting in. They're shooting in. So if I kind of realize, well, if I close that distance, this is why I wanted to leave my distance to last. But if I close that distance, probably it's a little bit harder for him to take me down. So I believe it's important to have a nice, good, solid posture.
Yep, absolutely. And you're right. You can see different postures based on the art that they're being used for. And there's a reason why, for example, boxers have got a pretty upright posture because they're not worried about somebody doing a leg takedown on them.
Or kicking them in the thighs and breaking their leg or something.
Right, exactly. And
it's why the BJJ guys, why the BJJ guys sit on the ground as soon as they do their little tap when they start the sparring. They sit on the ground.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, if you get to the ground, get to the ground. But I don't see any reason to sit on the ground, and that's because they're functioning within a certain rule set. Aikido is free. We don't have rules per se. And that's why I think it's important to have a good solid posture.
Yeah, I still remember and I don't remember which of the Gracies it was. I think he went and fought over in Japan, and he just got kicked on the ground. He just kept getting kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked, and then they threw in the towel. Like, all right, you're done. Well, as soon as you bring kicking into it, that ground is not the good place to be.
Definitely not.
So, and it doesn't take a genius to take the boots to somebody who's laying on the ground.
Well, they banned the soccer ball kick in the penalty kick, the kick to the head in MMA.
Sure.
Right. And so the MMA's got its own rules as well. So I mean, if you're on the ground, get your hands up, because in a bar, you never know. Someone might just kick you in the head.
Exactly. Yeah. Gravity brings everything down there. So as bar stools and things are flying around, they're landing on you. You're down there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yep.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the last one is Mai, and Mai is super important. And it's a big reason why I believe we should learn how to strike properly, learn how to punch properly, learn how to throw kicks properly, because then you can judge distance better.
Right.
And the word Mai itself, so it means a suitable distance. So it's like the gap, and then the I means suitable. So it's suitable for whatever situation you find yourself in. This is the real meaning of Mai. It's not just this distance. It's a flexible meaning. It means it means to be flexible and to find the distance that suits you in each situation.
Sure.
And I also find that in most martial arts, there's 3 distances. There's short, there's middle, and there's long. But I've got this cool little diagram here, and I wish I could claim that it was mine, but it's not. But you can see here that this diagram suggests that there are 5 distances.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I put this in here, because some of the videos that we'll check out later, you see someone, holding their hands out and running so far to grab onto somebody, and it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. You don't run from, a few meters back with your hands out saying, hey, I'm going to grab you. I'm going to grab you. It just doesn't happen. But these are cool, huh? I mean, you can see the different distances. You got this one here, Hashai, which is throw things at people. I guess in the old days, it would have been like ninja stars or maybe spears, I suppose.
Or arrows, or anything that's flying. I mean, I know people that have been hitting bars with pool balls flying across the room. So
there you go. And you better have a pretty good reaction if you're gonna dodge a pool ball. But
yeah, unfortunately you didn't, and to this day you still can't smell anything. But
oh my god,
it happens. Yeah.
So unfortunately, Aikido is probably not suited to anything like this, but we can still learn how to keep our distance. But I think the other 4 that I have here, Aikido, you should be able to handle all 4. And you can see here, like Buki, like handheld weapons. Distance, this is the range that someone would stand if they had a knife or they had a gun.
Or baseball bat. A little
bit, baseball bat, which is Yoka Minuchi is perfect for a baseball bat,
Yeah.
Judging the distance, learning how to judge the distance, when to go in, when to take a step back. When you go in, what do you do? You're not going to do a nice iriminagi if someone swings a bat at you.
Right. Yeah.
You may duck it, either run, get the hell out of there, or put them in a chokehold or do something. Yep. But you're not doing a nice, beautiful, aesthetically pleasing iriminagi on them. That's for sure.
That's correct.
You have the arm distance, 1 arm's length away. What can you do within that space? Again, do you go in? Do you do the technique? Do you take a step back? Do you create distance? Do you make distance? There's so many things that are so important. And unfortunately, I believe that we're losing a lot of this in Aikido, but it's all there. It's all there. That's the whole point I'm trying to make. And back onto the theme of what we can do in 2023. Well, we can start to think about this a little bit more. And then there's the kakuto, which is the close range stuff. And I've always said that Judo is the complementary short form of Aikido, and Aikido is the complementary long form of Judo. There was a reason why Kano Jigoro, the founder of Judo, sent his top guys to Ueshiba Sensei, right? Because he was teaching them how to handle the long form.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? This diagram is perfect. I don't even really need to explain it.
Sure.
But why are we not doing the other way around? Why are we not learning in Aikido how to handle short form? What happens if someone's really close to you, this close to you?
Yep.
What do you do? I mean, we do have footwork techniques where we create the distance, but this whole kokuto thing of being in close, learning how to take someone down, learning how to manipulate gi, or if you don't have a gi, body parts, it's totally lost. And this is the whole point of cross training and double checking, bringing some of these extra things into your toolbox in Aikido, whereas they're super helpful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the ways that I discern Aikido and Judo, and really they are brother arts, complementary. Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, Aikido, and Sumo really are all so closely related that I think they have far more in common than they are different.
Oh, totally.
But to me, Judo seems to do most of its work inside the grasp. Like they assume that that's the starting position, and Aikido prefers to get outside of the flank, which I personally like as being tactically and strategically superior, because the most dangerous place I can be is right in front of you. You've got all of your weapons pointed at me, and I like being around the side or around the back. So that's just my personal.
No, it's 100%. And you know what? One of my training buddies said to me, he's a third Dan, and he said to me once, just a few months ago, wow, he's like, man, I can really see how the wrestling is helping you, because we're great friends and it's totally cool, but he was being a dick on purpose. He was trying to block me. He was trying to stop me. He was trying to do anything he could, right? And the only reason he was doing that is because we're basically best friends, and there's no ego, there's no love lost.
Sure.
But I was resorting to getting in there close. And and he was like, man, he's like, you can see how and I said, yeah, because they complement each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been working with a wrestler now for 10, 12 years, and same thing. It fills a great gap that is there that Aikido tends to not really want to go into. And that is one of it, which is dealing with a lower level, like body locks and going in low, which I really like. Even though I'm tall, you wouldn't think that, being as tall as I am, I'd want to drop down, but I really like the level change and all of the different tools that you can use that are a little outside the standard, upright, prim posture that Aikido tends to gravitate towards. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, but the thing is, we have this in Aikido. It's just it's not being explored deep enough. We have Ushido Waza. We have techniques that people grab you from behind, and they grab your wrist. Right?
Even don't they call the lift, turn, and drop the Aikido Tosh? I thought I saw that listed as, and I saw it in a book. I was like, okay, this is just picking somebody up and slamming them down on the ground. That's wrestling all day long.
It is. It's totally. I mean, you put two little children together who have never done martial arts before, and it's just built in there. Our instincts are to wrestle, and you see them. Kids that have never done a wrestling class in their life, they'll pick each other up and try and dump them on the ground. And
yeah. And the more I studied it, the more I realized the principles of Aikido are in wrestling, where you get a superior position, you get in close and you engage. And personally, I think Aikido is a grappling art. It's just a slightly more intricate one than what we normally see with wrestling. But it's get in close and wrap up.
I think we could maybe tweak that a little to say it was a grappling art.
It was, yeah, exactly.
Because now it's become a throwing art,
right?
Basically,
yeah.
Right, and it's like, okay, why am I throwing them? Well, I'm throwing them perhaps maybe because they tried to get away. I've for example, I had someone locked up the other day, and I had his arm locked up on my shoulder, and then I threw him. Right? And then when it was my turn to attack him, he just went straight for the throw. And I said, dude, learn the jutsu first. Learn the jujutsu. Lock me up. So I had my arm up I said, lock my arm up and then do the throw. And I think people are trying to skip over that step, the jutsu step, and just going for the nice throw.
And it's so common to go speeding past the setup to want to get to the finish. And that's, to me, the devil's in the setup. If you set something up, the finish is easy. In fact, it almost does itself.
Exactly does. That's what I was
found the same thing with wrestling, by the way. The more the grappling you get into, if you think about setting it up and being in a good position, you'll get there. You don't have to use, tremendous muscle to try to fight your way through to the finish you're looking for, because you'll always take the wrong way to get there. It won't be quite right.
Like I said, play chess.
Right. Yeah.
Set it up. If he doesn't fall for it, set up the next one. Then you can do the nice nugget.
And I mean, how many times have we seen strategists talk about, don't think of the end of the battle. You think about right now. You think about what's the first thing that sets up the next thing, and don't try to predict the outcome. Just fight the fight, because who knows what happens. And that's where being flexible is a huge.
I'm so passionate about this topic that we're talking about, because I see the power that Aikido has. But I also see all the problems that need to be plugged. And this if we could change this just a little bit, if we could train like this just a little bit more, I really believe that in the power of Aikido we can get right up there to one of the top martial arts in the world. I have no doubt about it.
No, absolutely. In fact, I was very excited because just before tonight's recording this, I was talking with a dojo cho of a fairly large Aikido dojo, and he wants to start adding to the curriculum to start filling some of these holes and making his Aikido and his organization's Aikido more robust in terms of martial capability, self-defense capability. And we had a great conversation, and I'm really looking forward to, I've heard this from a number of different people, whether they're, in their own dojo, maybe there's an instructor, assistant instructor, maybe just a student, and say, you know what, I want my Aikido to do this. And I think there's a way to do it, and do it respectfully. You don't need to be, the vegan at the barbecue saying, hey, listen, I want to do things different than everybody else. but I think that within every dojo, there's probably a handful of people or a few people that say, you know, I'd like to do that too. Let's maybe take some time off the mat, or let's get together and, you know, we won't bother a class, but we'll talk with the instructor and say, hey, can you show us more of this side of Aikido or this side of the martial art? Because we want this. And I think that's, any business is driven by customer demand. And I don't think martial arts is any different. But waiting for your instructors to change it silently, as you hope they will predict your wishes, is not going to happen. That's just not in the cards. But it's cool to hear of these martial artists that are taking this on more. And even the ones that broke my heart the most are the ones that saying Aikido will never be able to do any of that. It's never been designed to be used for self-defense. It's never designed to be a martial art. It's something else, and it was never that and can never be that. Like,
yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's like saying, like having a parent say, my child is completely worthless.
Yeah.
Like, but it's your responsibility, isn't it, to teach them, to make them strong, to, you know, mentor them and have them grow up to be capable and responsible, all the things a good human being should be. But to have given up on it, wow.
I mean, Aikido it's the all-encompassing martial art, and I believe it's the only one in the world that is so. And what I mean by that is that because it's so free, all-encompassing means we should be allowed to bring a couple of extra things in and train, but also all-encompassing means it's for everybody. It's for your grandma down the street. It's for grandpa. It's for it should be for a 25-year-old healthy, fit young male. It should be. Unfortunately, it's not right now. It should be. It should be for everybody. And so we need to cater to all kinds. We need to cater for those young guys that want to go out and train. We're losing them. We're losing them to judo. Well, mostly now we're losing them to BJJ, right? We need to make Aikido attractive for the entire population. And doing more along the lines of what we've just talked about would certainly help attract young people. And we are sorely lacking young people in our art. It's basically you could go and teach Aikido at the old folks home here in Japan right now. It's you rarely meet anyone in their 20s, 30s, a little bit, 40s, a little, yeah, starting to get more, but it's mostly 50s, 60s. It's and it's such a shame.
Yeah, that is a shame. I don't think it's quite that bad here in the States, but I have gone to some seminars that the youngest person in the room looked to be about 50. So, you know, it's tough. And
in Australia, I can tell you, in Australia,
a lot of Aikido dojos are surviving on having kids classes where they got 5-year-olds to 10-year-olds, and then most of them don't stay. Like maybe 1 in 50 might stay to train as an adult. But you know,
in Australia, it's become so bad. When I was growing up in Aikido in Australia, I started when I was 21. It was fully young people, and there are no young people anywhere anymore. It's just they're just not there, and it's a real shame. I think Josh Gold from Aikido Journal did a study on it, didn't he? About the young people in the States, and
that was disturbing. How basically the Aikido base was aging out.
But at the same time, I mean, they did that study, but then they were also pushing playing violins on the side of the mats.
Oh, yeah.
As well. So, I mean,
you know, I think a lot of businesses go through that. I mean, didn't McDonald's do that when back in the day, they wanted to do sushi and they wanted to have all these other different things at their restaurants, and they found it was a failure because when you try to appeal to everybody, you really appeal to nobody.
Right.
And
that's a pretty good saying. Yeah.
You know, but I agree with you. I think, you know, in looking at judo, because I've trained judo as well, and I like wrestling, but you know, once you're out of high school or college, there really isn't access to wrestling anymore. But
judo's a young person's sport, almost.
They both are, and I'm sad because of that. I mean, yes, there are judoka who train. You know, you can at least access judo training as an adult. But wrestling tends to be so hard that only young bodies can really hold up to it. And I do think Aikido has that feature of being able to be trained all the way through somebody's adulthood. You don't have to limit it because you're not 25 or under. your bones are still kind of half rubber and you can heal real quick.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about it. I mean, you can do all those hard martial arts when you're younger, then you can come to Aikido when you're a little bit older if you want. But it should have that range of kids right through to when you're on your deathbed.
Right. Well, and drifting away, I think one of the things that has turned off the all the way up to about 35 years old is the lack of vigor and the lack of martial integrity. And I think if there was a blessing for kind of the age that martial arts went through from UFC 1 until now, is the average audience has gotten a little bit more sophisticated. They're not reading ads in the back of comic books to get, Count Dante's course and how to be the deadliest man alive. That stuff is
can I plug my blog for a second, because I wrote about that exact topic.
Yep.
About these 1 month to get your karate master's belt in the comic. So if you go to my Substack, it's rionne.substack.com. There's an article there I wrote, and I put examples of comics from the 70s and 80s where they'll get these fast passes to become karate masters in a month.
Right. And yeah, average lay person that doesn't know anything about martial arts is still going to be the average lay person. But I think with all of the content that we can see, whether it's competitive fighting or surveillance videos of actual fights and ambushes and attacks, people can say, all right, I know what looks kind of real and I know what looks fake. And, unfortunately, there was so much footage out there of Aikido, it falls into that. This just looks ridiculous and stupid. And I don't know how we're ever going to get over that part, except to say, I think if we jumped forward 10 years, I think we could fairly easily get to a position where even among average people, they see that there's kind of two different Aikidos, almost like there's Tai Chi and Kung Fu, which I know that there's layers to each one of those, but generally they view as Kung Fu is like a martial art, and Tai Chi is kind of like an old person's exercise thing. There could be such a bifurcation, provided there are enough of us that want to have a martial Aikido exist, because if we don't, it'll just be, basically like old people practicing in a park or what have you.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like anything right now in the world. I think the TikTok, Instagram has completely ruined mankind. We're not built as humans to be exposed to wide audiences. We're people from villages, and so now you have all these people that are desperate to have millions of views or millions of likes.
Sure. That is one thing that bugs me, and I will have to comment about this, because there are a number of YouTube channels out there, some that are Aikido, but kind of martial arts in general. What I realized about YouTube a couple of years ago was that it's an entertainment platform. It's not an education platform. Yes, you can get pretty well educated on it, but if you're chasing clicks, you're going to basically be a clown. You're going to be somebody who's chasing a popularity, and you're not going to have anything really to do with doing the hard work that it takes to be a good martial artist. And 100%. It's kind of sad that way, but it's very rewarding getting those. I get 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers, but when you're running around in clodhoppers and a clown nose, I have no interest in that type of appeal. Me
either. And that's why I have a YouTube channel. That's why you'll see that I never put any regular Aikido stuff up there.
Sure.
Because I'm not interested in that. I just my videos are more, and they're very few and far between, maybe 3 or 4 per year. But it's just, how can we add a little bit of this into Aikido? Mostly is how I look at it.
Sure.
So, but this is just a good segue to maybe have a look at some of the videos that
you've gotten some videos. So let's go ahead and
So I should probably start straight away. Is that I don't know any of the people in here. I've never met them. I'm not attacking them personally. This is not an attack on their integrity as a person or their level of Aikido or how they want to practice Aikido. You can practice Aikido however you want to practice it. That's totally fine. This is more of a what would I do if I was training with them as a partner, or maybe taking a seminar, teaching a course, how would I tweak it to stick on to the topic of this podcast, which is how to make our Aikido more martial in 2023. So I want to just repeat that I'm not here to, both of us, we're not here to attack anyone's integrity or to say you suck. It's not about that. It's more about, okay, how, in that little bullet point that I just wrote on Word there, how can we cover some of these bullet points whilst looking at examples that probably don't really cover the bullet points so much? I mean, there's no point in me putting up one of my videos saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm great, I'm $1 million." You know, no one will watch. It's important maybe to a little bit of a positive critiquing, I think, is what we'll go for here.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, let me share my screen again. And again, one more time, I don't know any of these people. It's just some videos that I've collected over time and kind of use them as examples to some of my students about how I would do things a little bit differently. And to be honest, I don't remember each video, so we may have to watch it through once. But here's a good one. This is actually not a video. This is a picture. Now, I don't know this gentleman, but I just want to ask people that are looking at this, like, what is happening here? This might be good for the first step, kategeko. But look at what's happening here. You have Uke. I'm not really sure what he's doing. He's trying his dearest to hold on, but he's just keeping his hands there. How can you get critical feedback if your waza is working if he's not trying to do something? The other guy here is looking off to the side with one of our pet hates. That's, if you want to do that, that's fine. I personally wouldn't do it. I don't know. What do you think?
There's one thing that strikes me about this position is that if Uke, and I assume the gentleman on the left is Uke because he's grabbing. Right. If he lets go, look at his shoulders. He's actually behind Nage, which is not a good place to have an attacker, is behind your shoulders.
Oh, and look at that. Look, the left leg there. That's perfect for it. Like an Ashibaraya sweep, or like you said, like take his back and pick him up and dump him. And so even if you want to practice this way, and that's okay, I believe it's super important to at least be martially aware. I'm martially aware of the guy that's holding onto your wrist. And that's pretty much so.
Here's another thing too, that which goes on. How many times have we grabbed somebody's wrist and they've turned their forearm in such a way that you're holding on by like your finger and thumb, like you have no grasp. I see that that's the grasp that he has with the Uke's with his left hand. So as soon as you get that, instinctually you want to let go because you know you can't hold on to them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Any normal person would just be like, screw this. I'm not going to try to hold on to this. I can't.
Right. So bringing it in here is super dangerous because that's just inviting the guy to say, hey, thank you. And he lets go.
Yeah.
So like, again, it's not a personal critique on this guy, but it's maybe to be a little bit more martial is when someone grabs your wrist, feel what he's trying to do. Is
well, and one fundamental that I've found of basically all hoplology, really, and of all combat, regardless of whether it's, militaries or whatever, you want to be facing your opponent. And right there, he's turned away and he's facing away from his opponent, even with his attacker behind him, which is like two fundamentals that are kind of
don't ever show your back.
Yeah.
Don't ever show your back in any martial art. That's just super important.
Yep.
Right. We'll move on.
Sure.
So again, I don't know what this is going to be, so let's watch it first once. Okay. Now I know why I selected this video. It's the well, let me just play it once more here. It's the slow motion brigade. And I always question why are you making your video slow motion? Well, because it looks cool. That's one thing. But I think it's really because the slow motion, people are emphasizing the most important point of the video, right? And that's why it's in slow motion. So the most important point of this video is not where it should be, where he's put it in slow motion, whoever made this video. Right. So when I see, this is what I see. I see an elderly gentleman who actually has a bit of spirit in him. You can see his face is red. It looks like he's been training hard. And he's if you look at the way that he's grabbing with intent. See his eyes here. His eyes are focused on the grab. This is really good. I have no problems with Uke at the moment. Perhaps he's a bit telegraphing it a little bit because he's grabbing from so far behind, but well, that's nitpicking. I would say what probably struck the reason I saved this video is what's going on right here. I don't know. What do you see? I mean, I don't see any feedback. I don't see any live.
Yeah,
a little bit further in.
That grab seems like it would be, again, that's thumb and forefinger, index finger that are the only thing holding onto his forearm. I mean, I've been in this position before. It's very hard to keep that grab.
Well, yeah, when you do that grab, I believe that you're supposed to do something with it. You're supposed to grab and then probably pin them onto their body.
Right.
Or pull them.
Yeah, because a grab to me is always a lead up to another attack. It's not an attack all on its own. I suppose the best argument for that would be somebody grabs another person, says, "Here, come with me," and it's just a grab and a pull, and that's all.
In my foolish young days, and one of the reasons I started Aikido is because that happened to me in a nightclub. I think I was about 19, and I got a little bit too drunk, right? And one guy grabbed me by the wrist and the back of the arm and said, "You're out," and turfed me out with just that. So yeah, I mean, that's 100% true. And then I guess here we're looking at this part. Again, eyes looking away, not really much martial intent going on. I mean, we don't know the circumstances behind the video. It could have been a really hot day. They could have been training hard, but it's still not much of an excuse to be looking away. And then here, a guy has turned around on you. He's turned around. He's grabbing your wrist. I would suggest that there's a perfect thing for a front kick right there. Here comes a front kick. But no, it doesn't. He just kind of slow takes him down. And you can still do the lovely Aikido throw, but you just need to be aware right here.
In fact, yeah, freeze right there. Go back a little bit. Right, here's the red flag for me. Nage's right arm is dangling down by his hip. As Uke comes around, his face is right wide open, and watch Uke's free hand.
Yeah, look at that. That left hand is open right.
That could easily pop him in the face or have a finger in the eye. In fact, it almost invites it because Uke's body is turning. It's bringing his arm around. And that could be a bear hug, could be a smack in the side of the face, could be
right there's an elbow to the head.
There's that's a smorgasbord of free attack.
Right. So it's not as we said, it's not a critique on this gentleman. It's just get your hands up maybe, or think about distance.
Because at the time, right here, he's to Uke's side. That's a good place to be. But as soon as he finishes that turn, he's now turned Uke right to, like you said earlier, he's now right in front of him. Most dangerous place to be.
Right.
And like you said, it could have been a kick that came around, just a flailing arm. If Uke would have had a little bit more forward, like added a little bit of energy to that turn, he could have just tackled Nage as he came around that turn.
You have to give props to Uke though. I mean, he moves quite well for an elder.
Oh yeah, and he's got some great ukemi. Look at that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So, what else have I got here? What's this one? Okay, I think that's enough. The first reason I chose this video is firstly, why the drums, man? The drums are.
Oh, I don't hear any drums.
Oh, you can't hear any drums? There's no sound on this? Okay, well, this has the taiko drums.
Okay.
On it, right? And
drama. The music creates the drama.
Right. Well, I think the drums need to match the speed.
Sure.
Okay, and this is going super slow. So anyway, enough of that. So what's going on here? Let's have a look. What's going on here? Okay,
I
well,
see
he's
a
got his
lot of
hand up.
shoulder tension.
Yeah, he's got his hand up, but he's relying on Uke holding on for dear life.
Right. That's one thing too that I found that you kind of need to train ukes to do, which is to give up their own posture before they give up their grip. Mm-hmm. Brand new people that come in, they'll let their grip get lost before they'll let their body tip over, forward, sideways, backward, whatever.
Yeah, I wonder. I think this is more of skipping over the jutsu, the martial part of it, and just going for the end, the Aikido Indo.
Sure.
Why are we putting our hand here? What does that mean? Well, it was a choke, right? Or it was maybe a takedown. It was, but now it's just kind of like, well, he's just kind of trying to snake his hand in there and get some kind of funky kazushi.
Sure.
I don't know, man. I mean, this guy is he's large kind of gentleman. I wouldn't have any confidence in being able to maneuver.
That's the one thing I found with guys that are bigger, heavier, that they tend to have more muscle just because they work out just by moving around. They don't give up their posture very easily.
Yeah, this gentleman's given up his balance quite easily and nicely.
Yeah.
I mean,
yep.
As an exercise, sure, it's probably good for developing leg muscles and strengthening your back perhaps. Well, I just hope that they realize what Itami. That's why I chose that one, just so they realize what Itami is. And it's not where look at the eyes. It's not looking down at the wrist here. Both of them are both looking at the one point. This is kind of an escape from the points that I mentioned earlier.
Sure.
I wouldn't have both guys looking at one spot, but anyway, that's. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the looking down at the hands, I think is an artifact of when you're a beginner and you're like, okay, what just grabbed me and what do I need to do with my hands? You were watching your instructor's hands do Nikyo or whatever it is he's going to do, and you just get in the habit of looking at the hands, which you don't need to do once you start to know the feeling of the motion. Your eyes should be on up in the shoulder area, chin, not and watching the body and everything else, not looking down at the hand.
Right. Yeah, good for beginners.
It's habits that get worn in as you go from beginner to intermediate, and then if you don't ever break away from them, you just keep having them, keep on with it.
Right. So again, keeping on the theme of how can we improve in the new year and trying to break some of these habits.
Absolutely.
All right. So what have I got here? What's this next one? Oh. I think he's one of your fellow countrymen from memory. I don't know who this is, and it's not really a thing on him, but it's more of just like this trying to. I personally would never try to muscle somebody whose hand is all the way up here.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of muscle in this one.
Why are we taking them to the ground? That's the question. Why are we taking them? See, he wants to go down here.
Right.
Okay, and that's fine. This is a valid technique, but we have to understand why would we do that? And the reason we would do that is because Uke is supposed to chop hard right through you. Okay, and as we've taken him down, see, there's no hard chop. He stops here. Is it a chop that he's doing, or is it is a showman, right?
Well, it was a grab, and then he releases the grab at the top.
Okay, so in that case, then you don't just, if someone's broken the grip, you don't just leave your hand up there, right? You need to give them feedback, and that feedback is, oh, what are you doing?
Sure.
Get your hand out of there, and as they get your hand out of there, you take them to the ground.
To me, I'm seeing a disconnect between Nage's lower body and his upper body, and you can see it with what's about to happen right here. See his head and his shoulder turn. His hips are facing one way, and now his shoulders are starting to face another way. Like his rotation is not in sync.
I mean, this is a very this is a style of Aikido that's really popular right now. It has been for a while. I suppose this is kind of like the Chiba Shibata style. I suppose. Those kind of guys. I mean, Chiba was a legitimate, badass, of course.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, I mean,
also noticed right there, actually go back a couple of frames right there. See the gap between Nage and Uke? That 4 to 5 inches makes it so that he has to use his shoulders to connect. I've found that the closer you get, like if you have your gi right up against his gi, like front to back, when you turn, your hands can be really light. It takes a lot of the tension out of the shoulders.
Yeah, that's valid. And being efficient in your technique. I don't understand.
Look at how his feet have turned. Like his right leg is coming behind, all the way behind and around where Uke's around to his left. So he's like almost spun from his feet to his shoulders.
I guess this mostly just comes from, okay, maybe not being aware that you can be taken down. That Uke could spin around and clock you.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen videos too where Uke gets taken all the way down to the ground and then Nage lifts him back up off the ground in order to do a Rimi. And I think we
talked about that. Yeah,
that's a lot of work. If you're going to throw somebody to the ground, why lift him back up again to throw him back down again?
Like I said, dude, you're 6'4". I'm 5'9". I have zero confidence that I would be able to do that to you.
Yeah.
I don't care how much wrestling I have or whatever. I would not be able to do that to anyone who knows that. So anyway, that's just me. And like I say, we're not having a go at this particular gentleman. It's just what I see.
Sure.
This one. These guys
I
are somewhat
like
famous.
that he ends this throw with his legs, not just throwing his shoulders forward. But there's so much setup in there that he's kind of fiddling with.
These guys are famous, the Singaporean guys.
Okay.
For being more concerned with how it looks.
Okay. Yeah, okay, go back a couple frames right there. See his elbow right next to next to Nage's chin? Even with a hand on it, that's closer than I like an elbow to be to my face, because elbows are powerful enough that they don't go through hands they go through hands very easily.
Right. I guess I chose this one mostly because here you have him right here. If that was me, I'd just go straight down.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just crush.
Instead, he kind of brings him back and throws him outwards and longwards.
Which is more dramatic.
Yeah,
it's more dramatic looking to see that horizontal throw.
Whilst kind of looking away.
So, yeah, I mean, certainly not one of the worst offenders when it comes to looking away.
Oh, no, definitely not. I mean, his techniques there, I mean, they're beautiful techniques, but I mean, it's again the same. Probably not a good example. There would have been a reason, another reason.
That was
fun. It's mostly just the eyes I felt on this young man. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah, we can do a couple more.
Yeah, what about okay? If that's a couple more, let me find some of the bigger culprits here. What do we got? What's this one? Okay, so this is something I put this one in here because I don't understand it. I'm not a Yoshinkan guy, so I may need a Yoshinkan guy to explain this to me. From my perspective, this doesn't make any sense, but we'll watch it and you'll see. And if there's a Yoshinkan person out there who can explain why this happens, I'd love to hear. I mean, I personally don't understand this. It seems to me that he's saying, I think this guy's pretty famous too. I'm not sure who it is, but I think he might be one of the higher ranking guys in Yoshinkan. The grip is super weak on his right hand. Saying to look far over there. I didn't understand. What do you think of this one?
You know, the only thing I can see is as a reason to turn those hips or to turn that way is to remind Nage to actually do a full turn of his hips, because a lot of people like to cut that hip turn short. And when they cut it short, they lose connection to uke. But I agree with you. I think turning and looking away and then stepping away right here, if you just as a freezer here, uke is behind Nage and Nage put him there. I'm not wild about that part, again, because of never give somebody your back.
Right. It could be that you're looking for a multiple attackers. There might be another opponent there,
right.
But if there is multiple opponents, I would probably want to put this guy in between me and the other opponent.
Right. As opposed to,
probably exactly. Wouldn't. And then you have a look at, and I apologize to all the Yoshinkan people. I might get in trouble because he's the same guy, but he seems to, he's maybe looks 80-20. He's balanced his feet. It seems to be very much on his left foot, which leaves yourself really open to any kind of attack from uke right here.
You know, the one thing that strikes me, and I've got tremendous respect for Gozo Shiota, but what I've noticed is that when I see Yoshinkan practitioners, they don't move like Shiota moved. They have got a completely different stance, completely different method of movement, and I'm curious as to why that is.
I'll give you my take on why I think why. And it's the same with Tada Sensei, who's a 9th dan in the Aikikai, and his students fall into the same trap. And I think it's because you can only get to being Gozo Shiota. You can only be him because of what he went through.
Right.
He went through his seriously, incredibly hard training. He went through experiences with other people, and he became that guy. And I kind of feel that they're only watching the end product, and they're skipping over what it took to get there. And I think if you try to skip over what it took to get there and just focus on what it looks like, you miss everything in between.
Sure.
And that's probably why it's probably more of a case of just being lost in translation.
Yeah, it could be. I tell you, the one thing, go ahead and speed this up to that point that we were frozen on, because it reminded me of somebody else, and somebody that probably everybody recognizes. Right there. Or do it, from the other side. Do it on the next rep.
This is great. I mean, it does teach you to get your hands up, I suppose. This is not a bad...
Hands up and off the line. No, from here. Okay. So I've seen this. I've seen Kristen Tissier do this, something similar. He does like a Tenkan step, and he's got his hand all the way around back behind him. He's got Uke's wrist in a grab.
I've seen that, yeah.
And he's got him completely behind, turns him around, and then brings him back. And I remember training that years ago. We worked on it in our dojo, because my instructor, he was taught to do that too. And that just raised so many red flags with me. You know, one, I've got my arm bent behind my back, which is not a strong position for my own shoulder. What if I lose contact with him? What if he adapts? He's behind me. I've lost sight of him. Like, so many things about that just kind of bothered me. I had trouble getting leverage. If I didn't really have them tripping by the time I started that turn and they recovered even halfway, I was totally screwed. But, you know, if you have a well-programmed uke that is taught not to go off the tracks, you can get away with that. But that's something that always bothered me, of, you know, purposefully turning away.
It's just a simple case of being a little bit more martially aware.
Yeah. Now it does look visually dramatic when you watch somebody do that. Boy, it looks, you get Hakama swooshing all over the place, and it looks really super cool.
Yeah. All right. Here's another one I want to show. This is the reason I selected this one, is because this is about fostering an environment where people should be keeping the kettle boiling.
Okay.
You can't hear the music, right, on this?
Yes, I can. This one I can hear.
Okay. So I also questioned the music choice. Okay. I don't have anything to say other than there's no martial arts going on here. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't want to, speak ill of anyone, like I say, but I mean, watch all their reactions, watch their faces. We'll play it one more time. Watch everybody's faces and their complete lack of wanting to move their body. It's basically this is a dance, what I see right here. These are high Dan grades.
That's the first thing that struck me was this is what I would expect to see of beginner to maybe intermediate students going through the footwork step motion of Shio-nage light. So they're not cranking anybody's shoulder. They're allowing uke the chance to do their ukemi, because this is a pretty advanced ukemi. So if they're getting used to it, they should be going slow and smooth so nobody gets hurt. But yeah, from I would expect to see a little, and there's some smaller technical issues that stand out to me. One is right here, right there. Why can you just pull the guy's hand off your wrist and set it before you start the motion?
This might be, I believe this is the Key Society. I believe it might be, or Takemusu Aikido, maybe. I'm not sure, but again, it could be a style thing. It might be that this particular style of Aikido is.
That's the second one. He brings his hand way up over behind his head. That could be very easily reversed. Here, as you watch Nage's right hand, you can watch the wrist break as she goes up, which is a very weak position.
Well, I mean, you got Uke here she's looking at Nage. It's right. Good eye contact.
And there's no balance. Right. There's no balance taking there yet. There's no Kazushi.
She's got her left hand up here. And she's looking. So that's actually pretty somewhat, maybe it's apart from her feet being shoulder width and not in any kind of stance. She's kind of suggesting, hey, I can slap you in the face here. But it's actually not that. It's actually just that they're trying to both look beautiful, I suppose. And I mean, it's really great that women
and again, hands straight over the top of her head. That could be reversed very easily.
I would personally hope that, I mean, this young man looks like he could go. He's young. He looks fit.
Definitely.
I would hope that they could put the kettle on and boil their tea a little bit more. Yeah. He's got beautiful ukemi though.
Yeah, definitely.
It could just be. It could, like I said, it could be the style.
Yeah, let's do one more.
Time? One more. What do we got here then?
I'm sure we could do this most of the for another hour or two.
Yeah, well, we won't bore everybody with them, but there was one particular one that I'm looking for here. All right, we'll go on to the theme of since you were just talking about Christian Tissia. I'm not sure who this guy is, but he does remind me a lot of Tissia Sensei.
And I'll say of Tissia, nobody puts on a better demo than him. I mean, his stuff is just amazing.
So I mean, the name of the video is Goffin, so that could be his name. I'm not sure. I just this is the one you were talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
I think the one you were talking about was this one.
Yes. Yeah, he turns all the way around away from that hand behind his back. There.
Yeah, that's the one. I mean, it looks like a mean kotegash, but it's the end product, right? It's not. I would question this next technique. This is what I looked at when I saw this, and I was like, okay, why would this happen? Uke is coming all the way around in a big circle. This sensei
and Nage's letting him.
Yeah, with his very wide stance. There's Ashibarai right there. That's a nice foot sweep. Eyes completely. I don't know. Maybe this is peripheral vision, perhaps. But I mean, right there you can see the right hand of Uke. That's a pin onto the hips.
Right.
Pin that guy's hand on his hips, or pull, do something, give him some kind of feedback so that he's got something to play with.
Yep.
It also could be that perhaps because he's showing the technique to the class, it's there's not really much you could do, but. Yeah, I mean it's nice Aikido.
It's a lot of turning. The one thing, and back it up just a little bit to one of the ones of how much time he lets. Firstly, he lets Uke come around behind him, and I was trained this as well, but he's standing there as Uke finishes his turn and comes in behind. All Uke would have to do is, instead of grabbing the wrists, he would grab him around the waist and he's done. It's over.
Bear hug him.
Yeah,
bear
body lock him. And he's toast. So the solution.
Go on.
Go ahead and back it up just a bit. Right here is you lead him around as he starts coming. You cut hard under his arm and get out from in front of him, because you can't be waiting when he comes around that corner.
No.
You can't be in front of him anymore. It's kind of a high risk move to let him come around you, but sometimes, real world, you find somebody's coming around you, but you've got to cut out of there.
Right.
I think staying there is dangerous.
Can we do one more?
Yeah. Let's do one more.
Last one. I just really want to find it because it was the one I wanted to show the most. I apologize. I just got to find it. Make these bigger so I can see them. I'm using these as tools to improve myself, by the way. I'm not keeping them just to say, hey,
always
it's not that
good to look around and see what's going on. And I really like finding good habits, because there are stuff that people do in these that is very good.
This is the one. And now this is most likely because it's in Japan, where we have zero threat of any kind of violence here in Japan. In Australia, and especially my home state of Queensland, there's been a spate of home break-ins with knives. It seems like every other week we're having home break. Just the other day, a young woman who was 41 got stabbed to death on a random home break-in. It's not anywhere near as close to the gun violence that you guys have, or the threat of real violence that exists in the States, but we still have the threat of violence, and Japan doesn't have any of that. So it's probably an effect of that, but let's just play it. It's
sure.
Is this the same gentleman it might be the same guy we just looked at, the Yoshinkan guy.
That could be.
Just kill this sound. I'm looking more at Uke on this one more than Nage.
You learn a lot by watching Uke, for sure.
What I don't understand what's going on here. That was the reason I did it. What is Uke thinking? When you have someone in the back of the collar, like you said, it's for a reason. It's for a follow-up.
Right.
You pull them down. Now, probably this is for some kind of demonstration or whatever, but you cannot react the way that Uke has reacted here. It's comical.
I wonder if, and having contemplated this for a long time, we teach Nage to finish. How often do we teach Uke how to finish the attack that they're supposed to be doing?
Yeah, good.
I don't think we do.
Yeah.
We grab a wrist, grab a gi, throw a punch, and then just stop doing, and then you let Nage do their thing. Like
this is a great way to integrate our 3 steps of training.
Right.
Take it up a level, right? So here, for the first step of the Aikido training that we talked about, the Kata Geiko, okay, maybe I still would never react like that, ever. But, okay, fine. He's done it, that's fine. The next reaction would be, okay, we need a little bit of pressure, and that would be to pull as he turns.
It's funny because right there a moment ago he raised his arms, and I thought, oh, this is great, because now if he turns, his head's protected. But then he drops his hands and turns around with his head sticking up.
Yeah, I mean, you're taught in all martial arts, get your hands up.
Right, absolutely.
And when you have someone coming towards you, perhaps on the street, or someone who's, the first thing you're always taught is, get your hands up.
Yep.
And then you can move from there.
If you got somebody behind you, you can't see him, and you turn, you better have that head cover up. You better have
hands up.
You're going to turn right around into a fist.
And yes, you're right. So he drops his hands. Uke does some kind of funky, crazy little reaction. And stands there. Like, there's nothing happening martially here.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's to me, because I don't like the style too much. I mean, it's not even really aesthetically pleasing. Well,
it's robotic and choppy. And I always attached Aikido as being smooth movement based, not abrupt.
That's possibly because it's Yoshinkan, and they seem to be a little bit more robotic and choppy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's it.
And I personally, I prefer a level change when I turn to face somebody behind me, because I don't like keeping my head in the same place, either vertically or horizontally.
Okay, dude, I'm sorry. One more. This is definitely the last one.
Okay.
All right, now just turn the sound down on this so I can talk to you. And let's watch it through first once.
Okay. There it is, the pick him up off the ground.
Yokota Sensei is the only teacher I've ever come across in all of Aikido that teaches this knee. Hey, that's not a bad thing. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Just take him straight down.
Yep.
Why drag him all the way over here? I didn't get it. And then why all the effort to try and throw him at the end? Like, you have a look here. The knee is actually, it's a decent, I mean, the knee could be better. He needs to drill kneeing people a little bit better, but hey, whatever. He's putting it in great.
Mm-hmm.
Why all this at the end?
He's also a tall guy, and I can relate to this. Okay. It's easy when you want to throw, to bend over. You keep your hips high and you bend your body over. I've found that limits. Now looks to be built a little heavier than I am. But I've found much more power in dropping my hips and keeping my posture up a little bit more like an athletic stance, than bending over at the waist. And if somebody holds on to you when you bend over at the waist, you're going down.
Right. How can we improve this? Like, we're talking the theme of improving our training. Okay, well, there's not really much we can do here. Sure, he brings him down. I would ask Uke to stand up here. Or maybe grab a leg.
Mm-hmm.
At least stand up. At least try as Uke to try and regain your balance. And as you stand up and regain your balance, probably you can.
And I found something that actually helps with the responsiveness. Because look, once he gets him on all fours here, it looks like Nage is keeping pressure down on his shoulders. Well, if Uke's on all fours and you've got pressure down on him, he's not going to want to stand up because he's got your weight. Right. But if you suddenly let the pressure up, then he sometimes will want to come back up. So you're inviting him by letting the pressure up.
Right. And I guess as far as make it a little bit more martial, well, I'm not sure having the inside of your arm on the top of your head here is rarely going to do anything. Maybe think about striking, perhaps, or going behind and right here. There's a choke all day of the week here.
Yep.
And if we knew how to choke properly, I think people would think about it more.
One thing that I've been working on with my students for the last couple of years intermittently, which is to actually get them in a position like he had with hand on the shoulder, you get them on all fours, and then you just put pressure down on the shoulder to anchor that hand. You're making them post. And that's a very strong position. You just keep weight on them, and then you pivot down so they can't grab your feet. Because what more do you need to do from there? Do you need to bring them up to do another throw? I think that's excessive.
Yeah.
But from there, and you've got to grab on their shoulder, on their gi. If they do come up, you can just roll them over with that hand. You don't even need to do a fully riminage. It's a great control position, and it's also a great position where you can just release and run. If you needed to get out of there, you're not playing with your food anymore. You've got them on all fours, and you can beat feet. So
give him a little love tap with the foot. Get out of there.
You know, it's a great position, and it's very easy to get to with very simple tools like a rag, where you just kind of, rag them down and they're on all fours, pivot out, you're done. So great self-defense stuff. So
yeah.
Well, it's cool.
So I'm glad you just to say one more time that we didn't use those videos in any way to try and rag people or put them down, and I'm very happy that they're able to enjoy their Aikido and train hard. I'm just saying, to keep on the theme of our topic of how could we make things a little bit more martial, and how can we check ourselves, and it's important sometimes to have a look at ways to improve.
It is. And, I wanted to kind of wrap things up again with the tip of, you're a student at a dojo, again, maybe you're senior. If you're interested in pursuing bringing a little more martial aspect of your Aikido, mention it to your instructors, mention it to your other seniors. You'll probably find somebody there that will say, yeah, I'd like to play with that a little bit more. Martial arts should be a place where we explore, not that we are just there to memorize some kind of chart or list or, whatever. And it's easy to get caught in a dojo culture where you get caught up in thinking, okay, what are the techniques I need to memorize for my next belt test? And there you get stuck into a very linear track. Now, granted, if that's what means everything to you is getting past that test and getting promoted, well, that's great. But just realize that's going to be more limiting than it's going to be liberating. Right. And it's fun to explore that way. It's what I enjoy about the martial arts. Most martial artists enjoy that exploration. And so give some thought as to what you want from your martial art this next year, and make some progress into making that happen. If that's exploring cross training, fabulous. If it's even just talking to people in your own dojo, maybe that have other martial arts experience or want to train with you in such a way to start playing around more, learning to play chess. It's more nourishing than you think it is if you find that it's intimidating to get started.
Yeah, well, taking that first step can be hard and can be daunting for some people, but once you take that first step and figure out how you can explore, I think that's just the most fun part of everything.
It is. And, with everybody that I've trained with that have taken on this aspect, there's such a joy in it. You're really like you're like you're playing. It's not like you're at each other's throats trying to tear each other's heads off. You're exploring and playing, and you're finding out what works and what doesn't. And you don't need to do it at 100% intensity in order to learn that way. In fact, you should not. You should be learning it at lower intensity. You'll figure out the math. And then when you get comfortable with that, then you can start adding a bit more intensity to it. But as long as you're not getting overwhelmed, because if you're totally overwhelmed, you're not going to be learning. Need to do it at a pace and a rate that your brain can process, because that's what a dojo is. It's a learning environment.
Well, this is not a new thing either. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Aikido might be one of the only martial arts that doesn't do it. I know in wrestling, in jiu-jitsu, in karate, we did do all the stuff you just talked about, right? And so it's not like we're reinventing the wheel and trying to make martial arts different. It's just trying to make Aikido a little bit more like the other ones.
Absolutely,
that's basically it. Yeah.
And and I found this with whatever art I've trained back when I competed. The greatest joy I ever experienced was when I had a really great improvisation that just, I don't even know where it came from. It came from all the practice that I did with the kata training and the discipline part. And then it came out in live play. And it makes me giddy to think about, when you find that success, like everything that you train for clicks when it needs to click, and it just happens. And that is so much more enjoyable than just memorizing katas and patterns, and that's the boring stuff. Like, don't let your training just be nothing but the boring stuff.
Well, that happened to me after 5 years away from Aikido. Right? I took 5 years off to focus on my pro wrestling and catch wrestling. And then when I came back within like about 6 months, the penny kind of just dropped. And exactly what you just said. And I still wonder if that's because I had to leave and come back
could be
for the penny to drop. I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed and just done that Aikido for 5 years. I'll never know. I don't want to know. But
Well, and martial arts to me should be a joy. It is a joy for me to train it, to teach it, to learn it. I'm always learning. I think if anything, if you're wondering at the beginning of the year, looking forward, make your martial art training joyful. That would be my recommendation. How about you?
Yeah.
What would yours
be? Joyful, but also meaningful.
Absolutely.
Not having empty techniques, empty waza. Our techniques must mean something. We got to be doing things for a reason. So whilst it's great to have fun, break the bad habits, try to make things mean something. And I guess we can finish off with saying, like, ask why.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Great way to finish.
Yep.
Ask why. Why are we doing this now? Why now? Why this technique? Why in this moment?
Because if you don't have the why, you're just being a carbon copy.
Yeah. As a good example, you gave me a great word on our last podcast, a cookie cutter.
Yeah, the cookie cutter. Yeah.
And I've used that since you told me that word. It's a great word, the cookie cutter.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Ryan. It was great to have you here again. I know you're about to get busy. This was kind of your holiday break, so
I've been off, but back to the grind. So
don't overwork yourself.
I hope, I'll try not to, but I hope everyone had a great Christmas and a very great New Year, and I hope 2023 is rewarding for everybody.
Yeah, me too. Happy New Year, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion. Stay tuned for more episodes. I've got some great stuff on the way very soon. In the meantime, enjoy your training.